They told you Krabi was the next big thing. Pristine beaches, limestone cliffs, lower prices than Phuket, the perfect place to invest in Thai real estate. Developers launched luxury villa projects promising 8% rental returns. Foreign investors, especially Europeans and Chinese, poured money into condos and beachfront properties. The marketing showed paradise, easy passive income, a lifestyle investment that couldn't lose. But here's what they're not telling you. Over 40% of new developments in Krabi are sitting unsold. Rental occupancy rates have collapsed to 30% or lower in many projects. And property values that were supposed to appreciate 10% annually are instead dropping 15 to 20% as desperate sellers try to exit. This isn't a minor correction. This is the beginning of a market implosion. And if you own Krabi property, or you're thinking about investing there, buckle up, because what I'm about to show you will change everything you thought you knew about this market. Let's start with the numbers, because they tell a story that developers desperately want to hide. In 2018 and 2019, Krabi's real estate market was booming. New condo projects launched every quarter. Villa developments sprouted up along the coast and inland. Land prices in prime areas near Ao Nang and Railay doubled in just 3 years. The pitch was compelling. Krabi offered Phuket's beauty without Phuket's crowds and prices. It was positioned as an emerging destination where early investors could make serious money as tourism grew. Foreign buyers, particularly from China, Hong Kong and Europe, drove demand. Developers built aggressively, confident that Krabi's tourism trajectory would support endless growth. Then COVID hit and exposed just how fragile this market really was. Tourism evaporated overnight. Rental income disappeared completely. Property owners who'd been promised steady cash flow suddenly had empty units generating zero revenue while still owing mortgages, maintenance fees, and property taxes. Many tried to sell, almost nobody bought. The market froze. Fast forward to 2024 and things haven't recovered, not even close. Industry data shows that roughly 40 to 45% of condo units built in Krabi between 2018 and 2023 remain unsold. That's thousands of units sitting vacant. Completed villa projects report sales rates of 50 to 60%, which sounds okay until you realize developers expected 85 to 90% sell-through by now. But here's the really scary part. The units that did sell aren't performing. Rental occupancy rates across Krabi average 25 to 35% annually, far below the 60 to 70% developers promised in their marketing materials. A villa that was supposed to generate 400,000 baht annually in rental income is pulling in maybe 120,000 to 150,000. After expenses, management fees, maintenance and taxes, owners are losing money every single month. Now, before you say 40% unsold inventory isn't catastrophic, let me explain why this is actually devastating for Krabi specifically. Unlike Bangkok or Phuket, which have diverse economies, Krabi is almost entirely dependent on tourism and the real estate that supports it. The province has a relatively small, permanent population. The real estate market exists primarily to serve tourists and foreign investors, not locals. When you build thousands of units designed for short-term rentals and holiday homes, you need constant tourist demand to fill them. Krabi's tourist arrivals have been inconsistent at best. The province welcomed about 3.8 million international visitors in 2019. In 2023, that number recovered to maybe 2.8 million, still down nearly 30% from peak. And crucially, the composition changed. Chinese tourists, who were major buyers and renters of Krabi properties, have largely disappeared. In 2019, Chinese visitors to Krabi numbered over 800,000. In 2024, it's less than 300,000. That's a 60% collapse in a market segment that drove huge amounts of real estate investment. European tourists are coming in smaller numbers due to economic pressures and the strong Thai baht making everything more expensive. The rental market that was supposed to support all these properties simply doesn't have enough demand. Properties sit empty for months at a time. Owners who bought expecting passive income are instead watching their investments bleed money. Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about who was actually buying Krabi real estate and what happened to them. For years, the market ran on foreign money, particularly from China. Chinese buyers saw Thai property as a safe haven, a way to diversify assets outside China, and a retirement or vacation investment. Developers specifically targeted Chinese buyers with Mandarin sales teams, WeChat marketing, and sales offices in mainland cities. Entire projects were sold predominantly to Chinese nationals who planned to use the properties occasionally and rent them out the rest of the time. The model worked as long as Chinese money kept flowing. Then everything changed. First, China's property market imploded spectacularly. Evergrande, Country Garden, dozens of major developers defaulted. Millions of Chinese citizens saw their domestic property values crater. The psychological impact was enormous. Property, which Chinese buyers viewed as the safest investment possible, suddenly felt risky. Buying more property overseas seemed insane when domestic holdings were collapsing. Second, Chinese capital controls tightened dramatically. Getting large sums of money out of China became harder and riskier. The underground banking channels that facilitated overseas property purchases faced crackdowns. Third, China's economy slowed significantly. Consumer confidence dropped. Unemployment rose, particularly among young professionals. Overseas property investment became a luxury few could afford or justify. And fourth, geopolitical tensions made some Chinese buyers nervous about holding assets in Southeast Asia, especially with uncertainty around property rights and potential conflicts. The result is that the customer base that drove Krabi's real estate boom has vanished, and nobody replaced them. European buyers are more cautious post-COVID, wary of markets that froze and became illiquid during lockdowns. They're also deterred by the strong baht making Thai property expensive in euro or pound terms. Domestic Thai buyers were never the target market for these developments. Most Krabi properties were priced for international buyers, making them unaffordable for average Thai purchasers. The few Thais who could afford luxury Krabi properties tend to prefer Phuket or Samui, more established markets. So developers are left with inventory designed for customers who aren't coming, priced at levels that remaining buyer segments can't or won't pay. It's a classic mismatch between product and market. Now let's talk about the specific problems with Krabi real estate that make this crisis even worse. First, location issues. Many developments were built in secondary or tertiary locations, away from the main beaches and attractions. The pitch was always that these areas were emerging, that future development would increase values. Except that development never materialized. Roads that were supposed to be paved remained dirt tracks. Retail and restaurant infrastructure that was promised never got built. These properties are isolated, inconvenient, and unappealing to renters or resale buyers. Even properties in better locations face challenges. Krabi's beaches, while beautiful, are spread out. Unlike Phuket, where you have a concentrated tourist zone, Krabi's attractions are scattered across a large area. This makes it harder for rental properties to maintain high occupancy. A villa 15 minutes from Ao Nang might seem close, but for tourists who want to be walking distance from restaurants and nightlife, it's a deal breaker. Second, oversupply in specific segments. Developers all had the same idea simultaneously: build luxury pool villas targeting high-end renters. The result is that certain areas have dozens of nearly identical villa projects competing for the same small pool of customers. When you have 200 luxury villas in one district, but only enough demand for 50 to be rented at any given time, occupancy rates collapse. Prices drop as owners undercut each other to secure bookings. And property values fall as the market realizes there's fundamental oversupply. Third, quality issues. Many developments were built quickly during the boom, with cost-cutting and corner-cutting. Properties that looked great in renderings have revealed serious construction defects. Plumbing problems, electrical issues, poor waterproofing, cheap materials that deteriorate rapidly in tropical climate. Owners face mounting repair and maintenance costs that weren't factored into their investment calculations. Some properties are genuinely unsafe, with structural issues that require expensive remediation. This depresses values further because informed buyers avoid problematic developments. Fourth, management nightmares. Many foreign owners purchased properties assuming professional management companies would handle everything: rentals, maintenance, tenant issues. The reality is that Krabi's property management industry is underdeveloped and often incompetent. Management companies take their fees, but provide minimal service. Properties aren't marketed effectively. Maintenance is neglected. Tenant problems aren't resolved. Owners discover too late that they've invested in assets that require constant personal oversight, which is impossible when you live in another country. Now let's talk about the rental market collapse, because this is what's destroying property values. Krabi's short-term rental market is brutally competitive and shrinking. Platforms like Airbnb and Booking are saturated with Krabi listings. Thousands of properties competing for tourists who have endless options. To stand out, owners have to price aggressively, offer discounts, include extras like airport transfers or free nights. The result is that nightly rates have fallen 25 to 35% compared to pre-COVID levels. A villa that rented for 12,000 baht per night in 2019 now struggles to get 8,000. And at those lower rates, occupancy is still terrible. Properties average maybe 30 to 35% annual occupancy. Do the math. A villa renting at 8,000 baht per night with 35% occupancy generates about 1 million baht annually. Sounds okay until you factor in costs. Booking platform commissions take 15%, leaving 850,000. Property management fees take another 20%, down to 680,000. Maintenance, repairs, utilities, insurance, property tax, another 200,000 to 250,000. You're left with maybe 430,000 to 480,000 baht net annual income. But the mortgage on a 15 million baht villa might be 600,000 to 700,000 baht per year. The property loses money every single year. Owners are subsidizing the investment from other income sources, which is not sustainable long term. Here's what's particularly devastating. The long-term rental market doesn't work either as a backup. Krabi doesn't have a large expat community or sufficient local demand to support long-term rentals at prices that would cover costs. A villa that needs to generate 60,000 baht per month to break even can't find annual tenants willing to pay that in Krabi. The few expats and digital nomads there want to pay 25,000 to 35,000 for long-term rentals. At those rates, owners lose even more money than with short-term rentals, so they're stuck in limbo. Can't generate income through short-term rentals, can't cover costs with long-term rentals, can't sell because the market is flooded with desperate sellers. The only option is to keep bleeding money or walk away entirely. And increasingly, owners are choosing to walk away. They stop paying mortgages, stop paying maintenance fees, stop paying property taxes. Banks are starting to foreclose. Condo developments have mounting unpaid management fees, creating financial stress on the entire project. Some developments are entering death spirals where unpaid fees force maintenance cuts, which degrades the property, which makes units harder to sell or rent, which increases the number of non-paying owners, which further cuts maintenance. The whole thing collapses. Let's talk about what happens when desperate sellers flood the market, because that's exactly where Krabi is now. Owners who bought at peak prices, say 12 to 18 million baht for a villa, are trying to sell. But there are no buyers at those prices, so they drop to 10 million. Still no buyers. They go to 9 million. Maybe they get some interest, but buyers know the market is falling and they wait for better deals. Meanwhile, more desperate sellers enter, offering properties at 8 million, then 7 million. This isn't theoretical. Property listings in Krabi show villas purchased for 15 million baht in 2018, now listed at 9 to 10 million with no buyers. Condos bought for 4.5 million are listed at 3.2 million and still sitting. The price discovery process is brutal and ongoing. Every sale at a lower price resets the market benchmark, forcing other owners to cut their asking prices further. The investors who bought earliest and paid peak prices are the most underwater. They've already lost 30 to 40% of their investment on paper. If they sell at current market prices, they lock in those losses. But holding means continuing to bleed cash on negative carrying costs. It's a lose-lose situation. Some are trying to rent long-term at break, even just to stop the hemorrhaging, even though it means accepting that they'll never recover their investment. Others have simply abandoned the properties, letting banks foreclose and walking away from down payments and several years of mortgage payments. Here's what makes this particularly ugly. Foreign ownership restrictions complicate everything. Foreigners can own condo units outright, but can only own land and villas through complex structures like long-term leases or Thai company ownership, which involves legal grey areas and risks. When the market was rising, nobody cared about these legal complications. Now that it's falling, they matter enormously. Foreign owners trying to sell villas discover that the legal structure's deterring buyers. Nobody wants to inherit questionable company ownership schemes or 30-year leases that aren't easily transferable. This makes villas even harder to sell than condos. It also creates situations where owners have limited legal recourse if things go wrong. Some developers promised freehold ownership but delivered leasehold. Others set up company structures that turned out to be invalid or risky. Buyers are now stuck with assets they can't easily sell and legal arrangements they don't fully understand. The whole thing is a mess of questionable legality, broken promises, and buyers who realize too late that they don't actually own what they thought they bought. Now let's talk about what's actually needed to prevent complete collapse, because right now, Krabi's real estate market is in free fall with no bottom in sight. First, honest price discovery. Prices need to fall to levels where they actually match realistic rental income and resale prospects. A villa that generates 400,000 baht net annual income should sell for maybe 5 to 7 million baht to provide reasonable returns. Right now, those same villas are listed at 12 to 15 million based on peak prices that no longer reflect reality. Until prices reset to sustainable levels, the market stays frozen. Second, consolidation and foreclosures. Properties that are bleeding money need to change hands. Banks need to foreclose on non-performing loans. Distressed sellers need to accept losses and move on. This is painful but necessary. The market can't heal while it's cluttered with zombie properties owned by people who can't afford them. Third, realistic expectations for rental income. Developers need to stop promising 8% annual returns when the actual market delivers 2 to 3%. New buyers need to understand they're buying lifestyle assets or long-term holds, not cash-flowing investments. The fantasy of easy passive income from Thai rental property needs to die. Fourth, better regulation and transparency. Foreign buyers need clear, honest information about ownership structures, legal risks, and realistic costs. The current system, where developers make promises that can't be kept and buyers discover problems only after purchase, needs to end. Fifth, infrastructure investment. Krabi needs better roads, improved public services, development of secondary areas. Properties in outlying districts will never have value if the areas remain undeveloped and inaccessible. Sixth, diversification of the buyer base. Relying on one nationality or market segment creates fatal vulnerability. Krabi needs to attract diverse international buyers and develop domestic demand. That requires different products at different price points, not just luxury villas for foreigners. But here's the reality. None of this is happening. Developers still launch new projects with unrealistic promises. Sellers still list properties at fantasy prices, hoping for miracle buyers. Officials still talk about tourism recovery fixing everything. There's no coordinated effort to address the fundamental problems. No regulatory reforms. No infrastructure investment at scale. No honest reckoning with the fact that the market is broken. Instead, everyone's in denial, hoping that if they wait long enough, Chinese buyers will return and bail them out. They're not coming back. Not in the numbers needed, not at the prices required. The market that drove Krabi's real estate boom is gone permanently. So is Krabi's real estate market about to collapse? It's already collapsing. It's happening in slow motion, but it's absolutely happening. 40% unsold inventory, rental occupancy at 30%, property values down 20 to 30% from peak and still falling. Owners bleeding cash or walking away, banks starting to foreclose. Desperate sellers with no buyers. This isn't speculation. This is what the data shows when you look past the marketing spin. The Krabi real estate market that everyone thought was a sure thing is imploding. And it's going to get worse before it gets better, because none of the underlying problems are being addressed. Oversupply isn't going away. Tourist demand isn't surging back. Foreign buyers aren't returning. Rental income isn't improving. The fundamentals are broken, and nobody's fixing them. If you own Krabi property, you need to make hard decisions. Can you afford to hold through years of negative cash flow? If not, selling now at a loss might be better than bleeding money for another 5 years and selling at an even bigger loss. If you're thinking about buying, understand that this is a falling knife. Yes, there will eventually be opportunities when prices truly bottom out, but we're not there yet. Not even close. Prices need to fall another 20 to 30% in most segments before they represent actual value. And there's no guarantee they won't fall further. The investors who bought Krabi property expecting easy returns and steady appreciation, they're learning a brutal lesson about emerging markets, tourism dependency, and what happens when foreign money dries up. Have you invested in Krabi real estate? What's your experience been? Let me know in the comments. And if this kind of reality check on property markets is valuable, smash that like button and subscribe, because these are the stories that actually matter, the ones that look beyond the glossy brochures and show you what's really happening. See you in the next one.